Hello, this is your humble host, Jamal Baraka from GT Media Reviews, Garbage Tier Media, and today's format for my video is going to be a little bit different. I couldn't get the OBS software working, and I just wanted to touch on this article because I feel like it's one of those articles where you have a writer shilling for the industry that's exploiting consumers, and this is something that needs to be called out whenever you see it because it makes no logical sense, but it keeps happening because uh, these people are either being paid off or they're not reporting in good faith. So this article comes from Rod Lamberti from Rodman Comics, and he's posting for Bleeding Cool, their blog. I've never heard of this person before, but I just going forward, I don't think this is a person that can be trusted. What I intend to do with this article is just read it and offer some insight into my thought process here. I could be totally off base. You might agree with Rod Lombardi, but in my opinion, he is full of BS. So, here we go. It says much has been made of comic prices, with some people claiming that they are priced above what people are willing to pay. That prices should be lowered back to what they were decades ago. That all sounds nice and all, but lower prices would mean less money for companies that produce comics, which in turn mean less money for creators who help produce books, along with less money for stores to sell their product, which means fewer comics, less talent, and less physical stores selling comics, along with even less stores selling comics. Buying a comic online for, say, 40 cents and then having it shipped would be a great way to lose money. So, right off the bat, Rob uses terms like comics costing 40 cents. I'm 30 plus years old. I've never paid less than $1 for a comic book. Not a new book. I've seen cover prices for 15, 25 cents or whatever, but I've never paid less than $1 for a comic. So right there, I have to call BS, and I don't think that Rob is reporting in good faith with his argument. Plus, we've seen events like New Comic Book Day bring in new customers. We've seen discounted comics like Walking Dead coming down with a book that was like 25 cents. I remember Batman had an issue where somebody got murdered in the Batman mansion. Well, Batman's mansion. That was like 25 cents and brought on new readers. So I don't think it's anything discounted comics that low can sustain the industry, but you have seen moments in which comics were lowered to bring in new readers. So I don't buy this argument. In fact, when DC launched DC Rebirth, all of their books were discounted to $2.99, which is about $1 less than what comics cost as far as the industry standard. This argument is a fallacy, and I don't think it makes much sense. But let's continue. He says that the argument that comics sold so much better when they were 40 cents or however much because when that person was a kid, that is how much money, that's how much they cost is not a good argument. Comics started out at 10 cents. Those days are long gone. The argument that parents were more willing to buy a comic for their kid back then because they were much cheaper is weak. Much more money is spent on kids nowadays. They get phones with monthly costs now paid by parents, which is far more than 40 cents. The past can be selective, rose-colored memory filtered through childhood. I remember my parents telling me far more often than not no if I asked for a comic. I also remember no meant no. I did not ask multiple times because I knew I would get in trouble for being annoying. 40 cents then was worth a lot more than what 40 cents is worth now. Who the hell pays 40 cents for a comic book? And I'm not sure why he's fixated on that number. That number is something he just pulled out of his rear end. A new movie theater just opened up here in Ankeny, replacing the previous one. Ticket prices are $14 per adult. I remember paying $4 a ticket years ago. Earlier this year when I rented out The previous movie theater for a private show for our customers for comic-related movies, it was $7 a person. The old movie theater is now gone. Granted, the new movie theater has vibrating seats and offers more than the previous theater, though it's a big jump from seeing a movie here from $7 to $14 in the same year. Heck, I was even informed no more free movie-related comics for the store from the new theater. The new company is all about money, which they should be. The movie theater also, from where I've been told, offers better benefits to the employees than the previous one could. Okay, that's all well and good, but what parents do you know will spend $4 a comic for a pull list for the kid, even if they don't have a pull list? Let's say 6 comics, brand new, $3.99 each. You're still going to be paying over $20 per visit to the comic book shop. I don't know any parents that would be willing to do that. Here, baby, I got $5 for you. Go get you some comic books. They're going to get one book. And then if you're looking at the quality of the comics that are coming out, they'll probably be done looking at it within 5 minutes. Also, if you want to say have a book like, let's say, Detective Comics, where you have characters getting shot in the head, you have Dick Tracy, where he's out there gunning down people in the middle of the street. It seems like these books aren't really aimed at small children. I mean, that's just my opinion. Plus, if you're making this argument, I could argue with you and say that, hey, Warframe and Fortnite are free. Why the hell would I send my kid to the comic book shop when I can just download some games or demos for them on the PlayStation? The argument is, this point is very weak. And it's coming from somebody that's looking to capitalize on the comic book industry. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the point is there. Cheaper comics do not mean more sales. As a comic book owner, I have tons of copies of comics that recently came out over the past few years for 25 cents. The 25-cent issue of Walking Dead, Sheena, Vaporella, Deja Thoris are still here. And many store owners do not want 25 cents quite simply because their stores do not make money on them. This will sound weird, though. It is true. 25 cents isn't worth it to the average person to buy. It's too cheap. What people say and what they do are two different things. That's fair, but typically when you see comics that are less than $1 or 25, 50 cents, it's to bring in and bring attention to comics that normally wouldn't have. People watch the Walking Dead TV show. People don't read the Walking Dead comic because they want to avoid spoilers. So if I saw a Walking Dead comic on the shelf for 25 cents as a consumer, I probably would be more likely and more inclined to pick up the book for $0.25 than I would at $4. These books aren't put out there to make money. They're put out there to draw attention to series that they wouldn't normally read. I probably wouldn't read Sheena, Vampirella, or Deja Thoris under any circumstances unless there was a discount or I was recommended somebody told me, hey, I should check those books out. So having a discount and cover price in those instances, not necessarily to sustain the industry, just to draw attention to a comic that normally wouldn't get attention, I think is a good idea. And I don't think anybody would argue about that. Again, going back to the gaming industry, over the weekend, Capcom released a demo for Resident Evil 2. It's free. So you can just log on to PlayStation, play a couple hours of it. It's free. The game doesn't come out for a couple months, and just you have a lot of people that wouldn't have normally played the Resident Evil game will give the game a shot just because they were able to check it out up front. This argument is garbage. Okay, so let's continue. It says, I have tons of comics in the dollar bin, all new X-Men, all different Avengers, Mockingbird, X-Men Gold. The dollar comics from the True Believers line and more do not sell more than the comic that are priced $3.99 or even close. On our days of sale, they are 80 cents, and even then they do not sell. If people are entertained by a comic, then the price in their mind is worth it. Doomsday Clock is $4.99 an issue. It is the best-selling title in the store. It outsells comics that are $1 or less. I have had to reorder past issues and new printings multiple times because more and more people are wanting to read it. No one has said anything about the price. Well, here's the deal. He mentions all new X-Men, all different Avengers, Mockingbird, X-Men Gold, those books are old as hell. So if you didn't sell those comics when they initially came out, they're going to just sit in the store. And I'm not going to pay full price for a book that came out 2 or 3 years ago. Matter of fact, these books were canceled for low sales. So nobody liked them when they came out. That's why they're still sitting in your store. Doomsday Clock is a brand new series. It's still on. People are going to be more inclined in 2018-19 to pay full price for a brand new series. You're comparing a new series to an old series or old series that have been canceled. You're also comparing a line of comics that are reprints with the True Believers line to a book that came out brand new with a new script. Your argument is busted and easily discounted. Okay, let's keep going. One of the many things I've learned over the time that I've owned Rodman Comics, is that I'm not going to make money off cheap people. Wow, way to discount your customer base. If people do not want to pay cover price for a comic, they do not have to. Online is an option. Piracy. Other store discounts their comics and so on. Why do I not discount comics all the time? Because it's not worth it. If I offer a pull list discount, then that is just comic loss, just money lost, meaning no one ever thinks I just saved 20% off my comics. I'm going to buy more comics. If someone is getting all the Spider-Man related comics and then gets 20% off, they do not buy other comics thanks to the discount. It's just 20% lost to a store. Over the years, I've had new customers who prepaid for comics at the previous store so they would get a discount, and then that store shut down, and then they worry if they will get their money back. It is not the first time that has happened. I have seen online businesses close suddenly that offered a discount on comics if people prepaid, and then have caused their former employees to worry if they lost money if they used a prepay. We do not prepay. I want to keep things simple. If something happens to me, no one is out of any money. Well, I'm gonna throw this back out at Rod. So you don't offer discounts to your customers. Now, my local comic shop does offer discounts, and I shop somewhere else if I can't find the book I'm looking for. The only time I visit the shop that doesn't offer discounts is if my main store does not have that book. Why? Because I get a discount in my main store. And if something else comes up, I don't feel as bad about trying a new series because there's a discount there. Whether this helps the store or not, especially if I have a pull list or I'm almost a guaranteed sale for a new series, I would be more inclined to go to the shop that offers the discount. So although it may not directly benefit the store to offer those programs, if the books are really expensive and you don't offer a discount program, you may be losing money because people are going to go to the other shop. The people that you have in your store aren't necessarily cheap. They just may not know that there's other options. So if you're just saying that, hey, this is the price and it's $4 and the book I read in 5 minutes, I may just never come back to your store. It doesn't mean I'm cheap. It just means that I'm not seeing value in your product. And with sales declining, those are other factors that you should consider besides the price. That's just my opinion there. So let's continue. Comics are not as commonplace as they were decades ago. In previous columns, I have stated that I got into comic books thanks to being able to read comics at a grocery store and drugstore and so on. It would be years before I would even learn comic stores were a thing. The lack of places to buy comics hurts the comic market far more than prices. Another thing I've stated is that some people complain about people have generally accepted $3.99 as a cover price for a comic. That's true. But the thing is, if the book was $2.99, I would probably buy more books overall than if they were $3.99. A bigger issue I see is that prices of comics is the fact that many Americans do not feel like they're getting ahead financially. Inflation is currently not an issue because wage growth has been slow over the years. After the recession, many people recovered to the point of what they made before the recession. Many more do not see significant increases in their paychecks, working to just maintain what they have. A way of life is a way of life for many people. Uh, yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with that point, but at the same time, it doesn't really change the fact that these comics are very expensive. $3.99 is the minimum that you're going to pay for a comic. And if you have let's say a relaunch, like certain publishers, Marvel, does all the time, you could have books go anywhere from $4.99 and up. The sky is really the limit when it comes to these books. So I don't really have a problem with the $3.99 cover price if the book is like operating in good faith. But once I start feeling like I'm being ripped off, I'm dropping the line. I'm dropping your comic. Okay, so here we go. For the average American, prices seems to keep increasing more than their paycheck can keep up. I'm currently trying to save up for a car. My hope is my current 2008 car lasts for at least one more year to give me enough time to save enough for a new car. Yes, I own a IROC Camaro, though it is from 1991 and the insurance for it is very inexpensive. Not an ideal vehicle for white winters. But for a new car, I do not want anything fancy, just something that gets me mobile. Vehicles keep increasing in cost. My father and two of his brothers, when they were in their 20s, both brought Corvettes. They weren't rich. Cars were much cheaper decades ago, and I did not have college debt. They did not have college debt. I am not going out buying a new Corvette anytime in the next few years. I do not know anyone buying a Corvette, let alone anyone in their 20s thinking about doing so. To visit Walt Disney World is over $100 currently. A quick Google search shows that in 1971 it was $3.50. In 1980 it was $8. Good luck getting the mouse to lower prices back to 1980s prices. Who the hell? Nobody's expecting to pay $8, but if you have tickets for, let's say, $100, you're going to Walt Disney World for the experience of going to Walt Disney World, and you pretty much know what you're getting when you go there. So let's say tickets were reduced to $50 a ticket. You probably get more people inclined to say, hey, let's go to Disney World. The tickets are $50. The studio may not make as much money up front, but you would have more foot traffic there because prices have been reduced. That's the sell. I understand the argument that you're making that, prices have gone up but you're using examples like you have a Camaro and Corvettes. I had a Ford Aerostar for like 10 years and I paid $300 for it. And it cost me an arm and a leg to keep that boy running. I just think you're operating from a different perspective. I understand where you're coming from, but at that point, it's kind of, what do you mean? Like, who cares? Okay, so make no mistake, I finally remember comics from my childhood. Avengers, Batman and the Outsiders, Fantastic Four, Justice League of America, Machine Man, Rom, and more I hold in high regard. Though comics from my childhood were made much cheaper than they are now, old school newspaper printing and lower paper quality most likely are not going to fly for comics in this day and age. That and the fact the paper used to make comics is now more than it were decades ago. Want to see more comics of comics sold? Wages need to go up. Trickle-down theory does not work when a company uses its profits for things such as to buy back stock that helps people that own the stock. Sears spent $6 billion over years trying to buy back stock when they could have been using that money to invest in products for the future. Their stock price is hardly worth anything now. Millionaires are not my regular consumers. I read an article about Nicolas Cage going to Comic-Con once. He spent $1,000 on comics while there were most likely people likely made people some money, very happy. Sadly, it's not going to happen here in Iowa. Well, here's the problem with this argument here. Why would old school newspaper printing not fly? So when I hear those type of arguments, it's basically saying, oh yeah, we can't produce cheaper comics because nobody's going to want them. People would pay if the story's good, the art's good, people will pay for it. If I had a Marvel comic in 2019 and the book cost $1 or $2, I'd be more inclined to read that book. Now, there may be other factors going into it, like paying the artist or paying the writer, but I'm not buying this because there are comics out there today that are $1 or $2 that come out that are just as good as mainstream comics. So this argument, I feel like you're looking to make more money off the comics on the front end because you know that nobody's going to pay for this shit in the back end. That's just where I see you're coming from. So let's finish this up. It says the middle class is what moves the economy. My customers are mostly middle class wage earners. When the middle class does well, then it helps a lot of businesses. The customers that spend the most in my store are middle class people with good paying jobs. If new comic books were less than $1, there would be no physical locations to buy comics at. To see more comics sold, wages need to go up, and everyone in the comics being offered need to be found entertaining. More money on hand makes it easier to spend money. Comics also need to be thought of by a wide range of people as a great source of entertainment. More comics coming out that can get people pumped, such as DC Rebirth, which was discounted to $2.99. It's a horrible example, dude. With Wally West Return, people really liked that comic, and in turn, we sold a lot of it. Why? It was Wally West Return. It was the launch of the new product, and it was discounted to $2.99. You totally discredited your own argument. Wow. Even the higher price reprints sold well because people wanted to read the comic. Excited fans spread the word about what they like, which in turn grows readership. So here's a personal story. When I stopped reading Marvel comics, it was because I had Secret Empire, and I had, before that, it was Civil War II. It was a line-wide event. Every comic was $3.99. At the time, I brought pretty much every issue to both events. And by the end of it, it didn't even feel like the storyline mattered. So around the same time, DC launched DC Rebirth. I wasn't a DC fan, have never been a DC fan. But I was getting burned out on comics and it was getting to be too expensive. So what I did was I said, okay, let me check out this DC Rebirth. It's $2.99. I don't feel like I'm being ripped off. And it was great. But the main reason why I checked it out in the first place was because DC launched it at $2.99. And in fact, the entire line of Rebirth books were $2.99. So the comics have crept up in price now. I think most of them are back to $3.99. But the only reason I gave the book a chance in the first place was because of the discount. When I hear people like Rob say, oh yeah, we can't afford to produce less expensive comics, that's BS. Because for the rest of that year that Rebirth launched, DC was kicking Marvel's ass, at least as far as the top 10 charts. I don't know if they made more money than Marvel. I doubt it, but as far as like goodwill from the fans, DC was doing a lot better than Marvel was. So there's a lot of arguments that can be made about comics not selling as much as they used to. I think part of the reason why comics are having so many issues is because to enter into the hobby it's way too cost restrictive. Like I wouldn't go and bring my kids into comics. The only reason I still read comics is because I've been reading comics for over 20 years. My kids, I let them play their video games because honestly, it's less expensive for my kids to play video game than it is to have a pull list. That's what's wrong with modern comics. So if what Rob is saying is that comics are, just what the price point is good, or maybe comics should be more expensive, I just say, well, if that's the case, then the comic industry probably won't be around for another 10 years because, to be honest, you have Netflix is less expensive than most comics. Let's say you get 6 comics, it's about $20. Netflix is less expensive than that. Hulu's less expensive than that. Going to buy a full price video game for $60 is probably less than a monthly pull. So just going to the mall and buying an outfit is probably less than a monthly pull. There's just so much other stuff you can do with your money. And then if I read a comic and it's brand new and it takes me about 5 minutes to read, it's a complete waste of time. So I understand what you're trying to do, but your argument is flawed, busted, and then in many cases, while I'm reading this, you're discrediting yourself. This is Jamal Baraka from Garbage Tier Media Reviews. I would love your opinion on this one. You can check me out on social media at Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook at Jamal is Trash. You can check out my blog at GT Media Reviews, and that is also my YouTube channel. And that's about it. Enjoy your Sunday. I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll have another video up soon. Bye-bye.